Good evening and welcome everyone on this lovely early autumn day in New York. Amazingly, tonight is our 38th Zoom panel discussion. This evening, thanks to the marvelous technology of Zoom programming, we are again able to connect with an international audience and bring together experts from Japan, the United States, for about 90 minutes to both educate and hopefully to inspire us. Tonight's topic, the post-war fertilization between ceramic artists in Japan and the United States, is a highly important yet under-discussed subject in the history of modern and contemporary ceramic art. Our illustrious panel of experts, prominent ceramic artists and educators who have all worked both in Japan and the United States, will share with us the insights that they have gained over the course of their quite remarkable careers. Our first panelist is JUN KANEKO, a Japanese-born American ceramic artist who creates iconic monumental scale ceramic sculptures. He is joined by his wife, Rie Kaneko, the founder of Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts, Kaneko, and the Rie and JUN KANEKO Foundation. Well, I have, of course, known of JUN KANEKO's work for a very, very long time. It wasn't until last year that I finally had the opportunity to meet the artist himself while in Limoges at the Fondation Bernardaud, where his site-specific work was beautifully exhibited along the new sculptures by our young artist, Tanaka Yu. It is truly an honor to have both Jun and Rie with us tonight. They are joining us from their studio in central Omaha, Nebraska. Next is SUZUKI GORŌ, a Japanese clay master based in Aichi Prefecture outside of Nagoya, who is celebrated, as you can see in this slide, for his whimsical and irreverent interpretations of traditional oribe and shino glazed ceramics. We have known each other for many decades, and I've visited him at his studio on numerous occasions, sometimes in the company of avid collectors. Then we have Richard Bresnahan, the founder of St. John's Pottery at St. John's University in Collegeville, Minnesota. I was first introduced to Richard by Matthew Welch, deputy director of the Minneapolis Institute of Art, while collaborating on the exhibition Kamoda Shoji, The Art of Change, several years ago. But it wasn't until earlier this year that we had the opportunity to properly meet at his pottery and get to know one another when visiting there with Matthew, Kondo Takahiro, and numerous collectors. It is a distinct pleasure for me to have him with us tonight. These four panelists have known and worked with one another over very much of their extended careers. So I'm especially pleased that, they've reunited here on this screen at least, and agreed to share their experiences as part of this important conversation. Finally, I am delighted to introduce Nicole Bertozzi, our brand new gallery manager and intern of many years, who just recently, like last month, received her PhD from Columbia. She has artfully organized this entire webinar tonight and will be providing interpretation as needed. So welcome, everybody. In our audience tonight, we are thrilled to have guests from over 17 countries with over 360 folks registered. From Europe and beyond, we have Spain, France, Germany, Sweden, Andorra. From Russia and the UK as well. From North America, besides the United States, we have viewers from Canada, Mexico, Bermuda, and Barbados. From Asia, Japan, China, and for the first time, Brunei. And from down under, as always, we have a number of people from Australia and New Zealand. For the United States, we have over 32 states represented and folks from the District of Columbia. We are also thrilled to welcome more than 200 museum professionals from around the world and scholars from over a dozen universities. As a matter of housekeeping, we very much hope to have time for questions. Sometimes we run out, fingers crossed, but please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A function on your screen. So now to get things going, I would like to give you a little bit of a preface to set the stage for our experts. As all of you here know, Japan has an incredibly rich ceramic tradition that spans thousands of years and has inspired ceramists today with the benefit from a tradition of rigorous apprenticeships, which impart technical knowledge that has been honed for centuries. The United States, on the other hand, is not known for having a robust or continuous historical ceramic tradition. Rather, what many young Japanese art students discovered upon arriving in the States in the post-war period was a dynamic increase of creativity and experimentation free from the strictures of tradition. The 1950s and 60s was also an important time for clay art in the United States, most especially in California. During this time, the iconic American ceramic artist Peter Voulkos founded two ceramic departments, first at the Otis College of Art and Design, which was then known as the Los Angeles County Art Institute, and then subsequently at the University of California, Berkeley. Many of Voulkos' students and mentees included Jim Melchert, John Mason, Ken Price, Paul Soldner, and Jerry Rothman would go on to become prominent ceramic artists themselves. This group today is known as the California Clay Movement or the American Clay Revolution. Eschewing functional forms, these artists created radical sculptural works rooted not in the world of craft, but in the realm of contemporary art and abstract expressionism. In our panel today, we will hear more about these artists and their mentorships and how they had an impact on JUN KANEKO and SUZUKI GORŌ when they were young artists who arrived in Los Angeles in the 1960s and 70s. We will also hear from our panelists their thoughts on the larger post-war world of clay art that has been forged by artistic interchange between Japan and the United States. So now I would like to address my very first question to Richard Bresnahan, but first I'll introduce each of the speakers prior to their first question. Richard is the founder and director of St. John's Pottery and the artist in residence of St. John's University and the College of St. Benedict in Collegeville, Minnesota, north of the Twin Cities. He studied at St. John's University with art historian sister Joanna Becker before completing a near 4-year apprenticeship with the Nakazato family of ceramists in Karatsu, Japan. In addition to making his own works using local materials in accordance with the philosophy of eco-mutualism, he has trained innumerable apprentices through the St. John's Pottery. His works may be found in museum collections, including the Minneapolis Institute of Art and the Idemitsu Museum of Art in Tokyo. So Richard, could you begin by offering us an overview of the kinds of important artistic exchanges that were happening between Japan and the United States in the post-war period? And furthermore, how has Japan influenced ceramic art in the United States? Richard?
Thank you, Joan. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity to see Jun and Ri and GORŌ and Yoshiko. It's a great honor. I would like to begin just on how the Japanese influence of ceramic art making after World War II with Isamu Noguchi and working and making beautiful clay sculpture at Kitaro Sanjin's studio in Kamakura, which was a time period when some of those early artists were then coming to Japan House to see meet with other Japanese artists. Kyo and Seimei Tsuji welcomed many American artists from America and helped them in their connections, where Mitsuo Kakutani, who was later teaching in the United States at Earlham College, brought Robert Motherwell, and these a beautiful painting of Robert Motherwell, who was influenced by Yuichi Inoue, the great calligrapher of Japan. Ruth Duckworth was also influenced by the artist Kazuo Yagi. were that she had met him as well when Mitsuo was driving them around meeting other artists. Kyo Suji inspired many women artists she had her own TV program in Japan at the same time that Susan Peterson had a clay show in California. The book Radical Clay is a very, very good example of how Kyo so encouraged women artists to be major in Japanese ceramics at that time period. The architect Marcel Breuer went to St. John, has been an architect in New York, went from the Bauhaus. He went to Japan to actually see his dear friend Kenzo Tange, and they traveled together after World War II to show him the wonderful environments of Japanese traditional architecture as well as contemporary architecture. In the invitation by Koyama Fujio, who is the director of the Tokyo National Museum and the Idemitsu Museum, to Johanna Becker to do research on the ancient karatsu ware, was the first time for an English publication on this ceramic center in Kyushu. She was considered one of the great Asian art historians of the United States and worked with John Pope of the Freer Gallery and Rosenthal of Harvard. But by the 1970s, every ceramic center in Japan had students, apprentices, interns from Europe, Australia, and America. In June of 1975, Koyama Fujio, on behalf of Sister Johanna Becker, sent a letter to the Nagasato family to secure a formal apprenticeship for her student. I began my apprenticeship in July 1975 to 1979. My life was filled with clay within a live system based on generations of knowledge. Meeting JUN KANEKO and Goro Suzuki in spring of 1976, Goro and JUN were traveling and spent 2 days at the studio of Nagasato Takashi ship, which became a friendship that has lasted for many years. And those late night conversations with Goro, I can remember one the best. He looked at me and said, "The best way to create original works of art is to use all natural materials." I took this to heart and this quote and promised Goro that I would do whatever I could to work with natural materials. The image of the 1982 St. John's University and Minnesota Clay Company exhibition was of Goro and JUN creating works of art that would be part of the firing at the St. John's wood burning kiln. And also then how Goro was making a whole variety of very creative teapots and combed vases. In 2000, Goro and Yoshiko, his wife, stayed with us to create works of art in the Johanna kiln. And then Goro, upon returning to Japan, sent 8 Shino tea bowls from Japan, all bisqued and glazed, to be fired in the Tanegashima chamber of the Johanna kiln that were featured in the National Museum of Art Shino exhibition of Goro's work in Tokyo.
Thank you, Richard. I love that you started with Tsuji Seimei and Tsuji Kyo,
Yeah.
who were really important to me. I was introduced to them by Jeff Shapiro, like in 1999, and they're the most welcoming, hospitable people. And I can only imagine 30 years before that, how gracious they would have been and how much energy they would have had. Thank you for summarizing so much in just a few minutes. That was terrific. So my next question, I'm turning to JUN KANEKO. JUN is a Japanese-born American clay artist known for creating huge-scale ceramic sculpture. He came to the United States in 1963 to study painting, but found himself drawn to sculptural ceramics after meeting the collector Fred Maurer. Kaneko proceeded to study with Peter Volkus, Paul Soldner, and Jerry Rothman before teaching at some of this nation's leading art schools, including Scripps College, RISD, and Cranbrook. Today, he has completed over 70 public art commissions, both across the United States and internationally, many of which are large-scale permanent installations. He has also designed sets for 3 opera productions. His work is held in the collections of more than 80 institutions worldwide. Tonight, he is joined by his wife, Rie Kaneko, an arts administrator, consultant, curator, and artist who has spent the past 5 decades dedicating herself to arts advocacy. She is the co-founder of the Bemis Center for Contemporary Arts, an internationally renowned arts center and residency program that has to date awarded residencies to more than 1,000 artists. She is also the co-founder of KANEKO, which hosts exhibitions, performance, lectures, and other public programs, and the JUN KANEKO Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to stewarding the life and works of JUN KANEKO. So my question to you, JUN, is, despite coming from a country with such an incredibly rich, long history of ceramics, it wasn't until you came to the United States as an art student, a painter, that you first found yourself drawn to the medium of clay. Can you tell us about your experiences of coming to this country and how you discovered ceramics? Jun-san?
Well, it was all a chain reaction of accidental occasion. I came from Japan 1963 to Los Angeles. And in that time, Los Angeles was right in the middle of this great contemporary ceramic movement. And there's lots of artists there. I didn't know anything, but I met Fred Mara the day I arrived to Los Angeles. And I don't know what that means, but I couldn't speak any English. I couldn't understand anything. So first time I met him, I didn't know who he was. And then Jerry Rothman, the man, came to pick me up at the airport. I didn't know anybody, so if he didn't show up, I would have been maybe doing something. But he came and picked me up, took me to Fred's house. That was the first stop I made after I arrived into Los Angeles. And then again, same problem. Language problem is still continuing with me, but I didn't know completely what's going on. So Fred started to make a dinner every week. He invited me and then fed me huge amount of food because he was worried. I was a young student, doesn't have money. So he thought if he fed me really good, I would have been okay. That's how it started. And then every dinner, he invites somebody, like John Mason, and then Pete Focus, Kenny Price, and then Billy Bengston, and then keeps on going. I met all of these people within maybe 1 year. I really didn't know what that means. After I met Fred, I was really shocked how the other people doing their own work, especially scale of it. John Mason had a big one-person show in LA County Museum. So I went to see it. I was so shocked I didn't know what to do. So that's how I got interested in ceramics.
Going to studios.
Then Jerry is the first person I met in US, and he was living in Long Beach, so it wasn't too far. So I was going back and forth. Anytime I could go, I tried to help clean the floor or do whatever I can. And then summer vacation came. I didn't have to go to school. I don't have anything to do. So Jerry said, "You want to come and help me? I can't pay you, but I could give you clay and fire your work
Place to live.
and
Place to live. Didn't you live with them?
yeah, place to live." So I did that. It's about 3 months. And then what he did was, "I'll give you clay, do whatever you want." He brought about 1 ton of clay and a forklift and then dumped it in one corner. And he said, "Here it is. You do whatever you want." He didn't give me any idea of
Instructions.
instructions. So I just started by myself, made a lot of flat slab and then painted on it. Because I was a painter, so I was more familiar with two-dimensional thing. So clay was really great. I made lots of pieces, about 300 pieces maybe in summertime, 3 months. And then he fired my piece and he said, "You are not too bad." So I thought that was a great encouragement. And then that's how I started to do ceramics. So everything is pretty much accidental.
Time.
But if I think about now, it's without people I met in this country, I would have nothing. I couldn't be probably not doing ceramics, and then I couldn't have a really exciting life.
Thank you, Jun-san. That was amazing. All you did is inspire me to wish that I had been around in the 1960s to be a fly on the wall, to witness what you witnessed and be inspired as you were inspired. And I think, and these pictures are fantastic. The other thing I want to note is that both you and Suzuki Sensei had big hair. You had a lot of hair. And you guys have changed, needless to say. But it's a sign of the times and reminds me of the 60s of my youth. Thank you very much. Next, I would like to draw Suzuki GORŌ into the conversation. He is a native of Toyota City in Aichi Prefecture, and he's a ceramic artist who has almost single-handedly revitalized the aesthetics of classical oribe with his unrivaled creativity and inventiveness. Upon learning ceramics at a polytechnical school and working for a ceramic production company, he came to the United States in 1969 and stayed here through 1970. While here, he met and worked with some of the most important ceramic artists of the time. He has since, of course, returned to the United States several times as a visiting scholar and as an artist. Suzuki Sensei's aesthetics are traditional yet playful, classical yet avant-garde, and he is known for creating monumental works that tease the boundary between functional and sculptural. So my first question to Suzuki Sensei is, as a ceramist, you are most recognized for your inspired and playful approach to Oribe, Seto, and Shino ceramics, all distinctively Japanese traditions that have their origins in the 16th century. Yet, while you have worked within the aesthetics of these classical Japanese traditions, you have also trained in the United States. How has your time in America impacted or influenced your very traditional Japanese oeuvre? Suzuki Sensei, but first we'll let Nicole translate the question to Sensei.
Yes, of course. 鈴木先生はアメリカで過ごした時間はどのように制作に影響しましたか？
こんにちは、鈴木五郎です。皆さん、よろしくお願いします。
Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Suzuki Goro, and thank you very much.
日本にいる頃は技術が先行していたが、アメリカに来てからは発想があって、自分の作品が生まれるということを感じた。
When I was training in Japan, I prioritized technique. It wasn't until I came to the United States that I felt like I had the ideas that would give rise to my own artistic works.
中学校卒業前に友人から瀬戸の職業訓練校に行って焼き物を作るのを見てきたというのを聞いて、これだと思いそこに入学した。
Before I graduated from middle school, a friend of mine visited a polytechnic school and told me about the students he saw there learning how to make ceramics. I immediately realized that that was what I wanted to do and decided to enroll in the school.
卒業して製陶会社に入った。3年間は会社の仕事が終わってから毎日2時間 1日も欠かさずろくろの練習をした。
Once I graduated, I began working for a ceramic production company. For 3 years, I spent around 2 hours every day after work practicing on the potter's wheel. I never skipped a day.
27歳の時、自分のデザインした商品が大ヒットしたため、ご褒美で3ヶ月間アメリカにでも行ってきたらどうだと言われ、アメリカに行くことになった。1969年、ひょんなことから名古屋の画廊で個展を開催中の金子淳さんを紹介してもらい、ロスまで一緒に行った。淳の家や淳の知り合いの家に泊めてもらうことになった。
By the time that I turned 27, my designs at the company were so successful that they offered me a 3-month trip to the United States. By chance, I had the opportunity to meet JUN KANEKO during a solo exhibition at a gallery in Nagoya, so I traveled to Los Angeles with him. I stayed with JUN and some of his acquaintances.
ロスでは大学の教授で焼き物のコレクターでもあるフレッド・マーラー氏にいろんな陶芸家のところに連れて行ってもらった。ジョン・メイソン、ジム・メルチャーなど。
While I was in Los Angeles, a university professor and ceramic collector named Fred Maurer took me to meet many different ceramic artists, including John Mason and Jim Melchert.
ジュンにはピーター・ボーカスを紹介してもらった。それぞれ日本とは違い、ジュンの発想でジュンに個性的な作品をエネルギッシュに作っていた。そんな作品を見ていて、こんなこともしていいんだと世界が広がった。
Jun then introduced me to Peter Volkas. These artists were so different from any ceramists I had seen in Japan. They created highly individualistic and unique ceramics with a freedom of imagination I'd never seen before. Seeing their works expanded my world. I realized that it was possible to make art the way that they did.
純の仕事場を借り、作品を作ることにした、手とチフサをモチーフにした作品で、石膏で自分の手の型を取り、チフサはろくろで仕事場にあった純の自土で、作った。何点も作り帰る前にギャラリーで展覧会をした。
I borrowed Jun's studio and made my own ceramics. I worked with the motif of hands and breasts. I created a plaster mold of my own hand and formed the breasts on the wheel. I used the porcelain that Jun had in his studio to make these works. I made several of them and exhibited them at a gallery before I returned to Japan.
当初3ヶ月の予定が1年に延び、1970年に帰国した。純とはそれ以来親友になった。
The 3-month trip ended up turning into a full year. I returned to Japan in 1970, but ever since then, Jun and I have remained very close friends.
帰国をしばらくしていろんな画廊で桃山の茶碗を見る機会が増え、桃山の茶碗の素材の質感がとても新鮮に感じ、市販の土ではできないので自分で集めるしかないと思った。
After returning to Japan, I had many opportunities to see ceramics from the Momoyama period on display at different galleries and museums. The materials and texture of the Momoyama period tea bowls felt very fresh to me. No one sold the kind of clay that had been used to make these works, so I knew that I would have to find it myself.
白の織部、キセと黒などに合う良い原料を集めることができ、いろいろな焼き物を追求した。10年以上土探し、土掘りに没頭し、300種類以上の土を集めた。
The area surrounding where I live is known for its clay, so I began to look for it. I was able to collect materials suited to Shino, Oribe, and yellow and black seto, which allowed me to begin my own experimentations. I spent more than 10 years completely absorbed in finding and digging clay, and I have collected over 300 varieties.
Thank you, Sensei. I find it remarkable that the man who did those early works in that gallery in Los Angeles of breasts with hands is the same man who made this Shino water jar. It's quite remarkable. And when I saw that early work, I was thinking of what was being done and then with Tashima Itsuko and some of the young pioneering women clay artists in the 80s, but you were there before them. So maybe they drew inspiration from your work too. Afterwards, I want to find out if any of that work was acquired by American collectors and how it was appreciated in that time. We have time for questions later. So thank you, Sensei. I would now like to go back to Jun, if I may. And we've just heard from Suzuki Sensei to discuss some of his thoughts on the difference between the understanding of ceramic art in Japan and those in the United States. And now I think it would be fantastic to hear your thoughts on the same question. How do you, as someone who is trained primarily in the US, see the differences between the Japanese and the American appreciation of the creative process of ceramic production? Jun-san?
That's a very difficult question. I think each individual has somehow their own taste. There is nothing and no value equal to everything. So when it comes to think about what culture is influenced, what culture, it has to go out of the material limitations. So a lot of time I think about myself. Why am I not interested in clay body like Japanese artists? Japanese people, ceramic people, usually they have a strong interest and curiosity to material. So like Goro is a really good example. He has 200 or 300 different clay, and he showed me what the difference in each clay. How do you tell that? And then he made a small ball with one clay body. Just watch this. And he threw it on the floor. And then it almost bounced. It didn't go like a regular clay,
Smashed.
just smashed in. So small thing like that, not too many people notice it, but I think it's a history, the culture helps people to develop different sensitivity from their natural environment. So these small things really influenced me. How, when I was looking at three-dimensional piece, I look at that piece and then that's the end of it, how I look at it. But I started to see space in between. Then whole different problem came to me. And then these ideas and attitudes, I can't say it's Japanese or American, but I'm pretty sure I had a very strong influence from Japanese culture or American culture. So it was still my big issue. I have to say, I don't know too much, but I was lucky I could make my peace without getting into big trouble.
Yeah, tell me about big trouble, right?
It's wonderful you came to the United States where you've become such a celebrated artist here. I wonder if you had returned to Japan and had this similarly focused oeuvre, back in the 1980s, how you would have been received. So every time I'm in the Hyatt Hotel in Roppongi in Tokyo and I see your two big heads there, I'm very gratified to see the attention that your work now gets in Japan, not just in the United States, and how brave you were to stay here with no language and yet develop an oeuvre completely different from everyone else's. So thank you for those amazing insights. Next, I would like to return back to Suzuki Sensei for my last question to him. So like Jun, you have made many monumental scale sculptural works over the course of your career. Can you introduce some of these works to us and discuss how you understand the role of the monumental, of the oversized in your work today? Suzuki Sensei?
鈴木先生の大規模な作品はどのような意義がございますか？
私にとっては大規模な作品を作ることは発想と技術の限界に挑む挑戦だと思う。そして焼き物を作る上で一番大事なのは出来上がりの質感だ。
I think of my monumental scale works as opportunities to push against the limits of my imagination and skill. When you're making something out of clay, the most important thing is the feel of the finished object.
集めた土の個性をコントロールしながら、形にしていくのは大変だけど、楽しむことによって面白い作品になると思う。
Creating form while working to control the characteristics of the specific clay I'm using is both challenging and incredibly rewarding. It results in interesting work.
自分が特に神経を使ったのは織部の30段重箱である。重箱店で展示会場の天井ギリギリの高さで作ることにした。
Perhaps the most nervous I've ever been about a piece that I made was when I made a 30-tier stacked oribe box. It was so tall that it only just fit in the exhibition hall.
高さ251センチ、縦横20センチ、土の塊で柱を作り、成形し、上部の蓋を含め31個に切り込みを入れ、中をくり抜いて作った。
I began by making a pillar of clay that was more than 8 feet tall and 8 inches wide. I cut the pillar into 31 pieces, with the 31st being the lid, and carved cavities into each of the 30 pieces.
柔らかいうちに、積み上げると下の部分が重さで潰されてしまう。されど全部積み上げなければ揃いが悪くなり、ガタつく。まず下のものから硬さを見ながら一番潰れない硬さで積み重ねていく。
While the clay was still soft, it was impossible to stack the tiers on top of one another without squishing them under the weight. However, if I didn't stack the tiers while forming the box, the balance would have been off and the stack would have been completely unsteady. So therefore, I decided to start from the very bottom, waiting for each tier to dry to the perfect hardness before moving on to the next tier.
すべて内部に、織部の絵が描いてある。とにかく細長いので神経を使った。これは今まで一番難しかったが、すべて成功した。
The interiors of each of the tiers is decorated with oribe motifs. Because the box was so tall and thin, this required great care. This was perhaps the most technically difficult object I've ever made, but it was a success.
ある時から大きな釜が使えるようになり、大粒だったら2個入る。それに合わせて紐作りで縦横高さ140センチの大粒を作った。
Eventually, I had access to a kiln that was wide enough to fit 2 large vessels with a height and width of 4.5 feet each.
二人のアシスタントに粘土で紐を作ってもらい、それを積み上げていく。最初、同時進行で4個の壺を4日間で作り上げた。
Two assistants made the clay coils, which I then used to form the vessel itself. I made 4 of these vessels at the same time over the course of 4 days.
そのうち窯のサイズいっぱいの大きいものが作りたくなった。そのため窯を高く作り直し、高さ187センチ、横に297センチ、幅130センチの大変更を作った。
While making these, I wondered if I could make a single vessel large enough to take up the entire kiln. I increased the height of the kiln itself and then made a vessel more than 6 feet tall and 9 feet wide.
乾燥の段階で切れが入ったので、予備継ぎにすることにした。
While the vessel was drying, cracks began to form in the body. This led me to use the patchworking technique that you see here.
大きいので、切り込みを入れると崩れる恐れがあるため、また一つも欠損したら修復が難しくなるので、神経を使い、突っかい棒をして切り込む場所を決めて切っていった。
Because the work was so huge, there was a chance it would collapse when I cut into it, and it would be incredibly difficult to repair. I placed support props around the vessel and carefully decided where to make each and every cut.
内側にも絵を描いたり、釉薬をかけたそれぞれの焼き物が無事に、非常によく焼けた。
I painted motifs on the interiors and glazed each segment. Luckily, each piece fired incredibly well.
何人かで、組み立て、金継ぎした。これだけ大きな予備継ぎが完成して満足感を味わった。
It took several people to piece the work together using the kintsugi technique. It was immensely satisfying to see this monumental patchwork vessel come into being.
もう一度大変更の挑戦してヤシダオリベで作った。壺の中に入って内側にも絵を描いて焼いた。
I then challenged myself to make a monumental Yashichida Oribe style vessel. I climbed inside of the vessel to paint the interior before firing.
窯から出すと中心部が絶妙なバランスで裂けていて意図せず中の絵が面白く見えるようになった。現在窯の前に展示してある。
When we took the vessel out of the kiln, a perfectly balanced tear had formed in the center. As an entirely happy accident, this tear made the images on the interior of the vessel even more interesting. Today, I have the vessel displayed in front of my kiln.
74歳の時、美術館で、展覧会のため天井ギリギリに、高さ390センチ、縦横170センチの円錐形の織部の塔をそびえ立つ織部の塔というイメージで作った。
When I was 74 years old, I made a soaring Oribe cone-shaped tower for a museum exhibition. I designed the tower, again, to just barely fit in the room. It was 12 feet 9 inches tall.
グリーンの湯だけの塔では面白くないと思い、いろいろ文様の入った織部で作った本格的な織部の土だから織部や絵の発色はよく出ている。この塔には自分の織部全種類の釉が入っていて面白いと私は思う。空に向かってという題をつけた。
I thought that a solid green tower wouldn't be that interesting to look at, so I included different Oribe motifs as well. I used historically accurate clay so that the Oribe glazes and motifs would show up on the tower very well. The tower features all of the different Oribe glazes that I use. I titled it Facing the Sky.
Thank you. Thank you って言わない。
Thank you, Sensei. All you did is, some of those pieces you showed, I saw in your studio on my last visit. And I can't express to the audience how powerful these works are. They are monumental in, I would say, the full range of what that word means. And I love the fact that you had to crawl inside and jump down the mouth of the pot to actually paint those scenes of New York and the cars and the scenery and so forth. And as a person who grew up in the Momoyama tradition with my professor Miyako Murase, I just love the fantasy and the charm and the sense of humor in which all of your imagery is so easily visible. Thank you. I would like now to return to Richard, who I can tell is having a good time and enjoying. So Richard, having trained in Japan, you returned to the United States to found the St. John's Pottery at St. John's University. Can you tell us what you were doing in the United States and how your pottery came to be and what your focus is going into the future?
Great.
Richard.
Thank you, Joan. This image is of Sister Johanna Becker and myself at the dedication of the Johanna Kiln, named in her honor and now her memory. The Johanna Kiln is a 3-chamber wood-burning kiln constructed and first fired in 1995. It's 87 feet long, it's 6 feet wide, 7 feet tall, and has 3 chambers that are quite distinct. The first chamber being the glaze chamber, and the second chamber, the first chamber is a natural fire, natural glaze chamber, and that has a 1-ton door that rolls open. So when Goro comes back and makes another large piece, we'll have plenty of room for Goro's work again. The second chamber is a Momoyama style split bamboo glaze chamber. And then the last chamber, which is in the photograph, is a 27 feet long Tanegashima chamber, which was a firing that Koyama Fujio invented on Tanegashima Island with Takashi Nagasato in 1968. So these 3 styles create 3 totally different styles of work. And so the firing then goes for 12 days. The loading, because we're loading sculpture work as well as everyday making pots, takes 2.5 months to load. And then after the 12-day firing, 2 weeks of cooling, 1 week of to 10 days of unloading, and 9 months of cleaning. So we fire every 2 years. The kiln with 45 people who come from around the United States and Japan to help with the firing, and 16 people who help with all the food, because at the lighting ceremony, we may have about 500 people coming to the lighting ceremony and about 450 people for dinner. So that's the firing of the Johanna Kiln. We have an apprenticeship program, and on the average, there are 3 apprentices studying for 4 years in the pottery studio. This is the only program in America for apprentices that provides housing, a meal plan, health care, benefits, and a salary through the fundraising and permanent endowments that we've been building over the last 45 years. We have a visiting artist program, and artists are invited to make work in the studio as a portfolio in the Johanna Kiln. And then in Mary Griggs Burke Fellowship. Mary Griggs Burke was a great Japanese art collector, and you mentioned Joan, Dr. Murase from Columbia, who was instrumental in helping Mary Griggs Burke collect one of the most definitive and finest Japanese art collection outside of Japan. Mary Griggs Burke and her foundation helped me stay in Japan during my 4-year period as an apprentice with the Nagasatos. Upon Mary Griggs Burke's passing in 2012, she then, her foundation was closing, and Marvin Pertzik helped with the bringing of over $500,000 to the program to bring Japanese emerging artists to St. John's, where we provide their airfare, their housing and meals, also the shipping of their pieces back to Japan. And so the last artists were Akira Koye, the Oji's son, and Miki Oka. We had an interruption during COVID for 4 years, so we were unable to invite Japanese artists during that period. And we have an environmental artist in residency program on the path of eco-mutualism for the time and research and study at the St. John's Pottery. So those are the programming. I think one of the things is to see the clay deposit. I know Goro loved working with the clay that was at the St. John's Pottery, and so did JUN. This is the clay deposit that was dug in 1979. The clay deposit is about 18,000 tons, enough for 300 years of pottery making and medium-range stoneware. In 1980, JUN KANEKO, and this is one of the things to understand about JUN KANEKO, not only as an important cultural artist, but he made connections for so many people in America. And so in 1980, JUN brought Professor Chuck Hines from the University of Iowa City to see the Takegama 5-chamber wood-burning kiln. This visit propelled Chuck Hines into being the greatest advocate for the introduction of wood firing as a method of education in university programs in America. Chuck Hines organized the most important international wood fire conferences in Iowa City in the 1990s that brought 16 countries together of wood-fired clay artists to discuss and exhibit wood-fired works from around the world. By the end of the 1990s, Chuck Hines and John Neely, professor of ceramics at the University of Utah, had calculated that there were over 1,600 wood-fired kilns actively firing in America and Canada in universities and independent studios. An example of Chuck Hines' wood-fired ceramics. And so for JUN to be able to introduce Chuck to this is probably one of the most important in 50 years. If you think of in 1980s, there was only a dozen or so wood-burning kilns, mostly on the East Coast in the United States, from other Japanese, like Jeff Shapiro, whom you just mentioned, Joan, who had studied in Japan and then also was working. So this is a tremendous cultural shift where the Japanese ceramic artists have been had an impact on American ceramics. So this is a piece from the front fire mouth of the wood-burning kiln with a rattan handle by the late Paul Kruger, the knotting artist. The second chamber, which is the glazed chamber, this is particularly significant because in Minnesota, there's a place called Minnesota Native Landscapes, and they collect the seed of the prairies that used to be here, that went all the way from Canada to Texas, but then replaced by industrial farming. So it's the first time in human history that we're using big blue stem straw from the seed collection and making these natural glazes. And I couldn't help but looking at when Goro was using his iron on his type of what they called the blue oribe, that the blue that's coming out of this from the iron background from this particular straw glaze is just wonderful. And we're so excited to be part of this kind of working with natural materials that haven't been used before in making glazes. The third chamber, the Tanegashima chamber, that is using, as you can see, the halos of circles, that's using wild rice hulls that were gifted to us by the native Ojibwe from Red Lake, and those ideas to use as separating pieces for the Tanegashima firing to give unique color palettes to various forms. This is a 4-foot stretch platter. So in that sense, it provides us this opportunity to work with all these natural materials. And I think in the final slide of the program, we were just recently out in the Red River Valleys of Minnesota, standing in a 10-acre field of black-eyed Susans with apprentices and the biologist farmers of the Minnesota Native Landscapes. This fall, we will be getting 10 round bales of the black-eyed Susan straw from the seed collection so we can make new glazes from that. And so I have a tip of my hand to those wonderful people that are restoring prairies in America And also, I hope that GORŌ will be excited and come and visit, and then we'll make some glazes together. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Maybe we need an in-person reunion of the three of you, either stateside or in Japan. But I encourage our audience, if you're anywhere in the Middle West, anywhere, you should make a beeline up to Collegeville, Minnesota, to see Richard's so impressive establishment and see in person what he's been able to accomplish with the landscape. And firing that an amazing kiln with wood that is just acquired on the property from trees that have naturally fallen, and use the materials easily at hand without destroying the environment whatsoever. It's quite remarkable. Thank you, Richard. My last question is for Ree. So thank you for being here, Ree, and being so patient. Could you tell us a little bit about the work you are doing at your foundation at Kaneko and the Ree and JUN KANEKO Foundation? I know nothing, so I'm anxious to hear about your work.
I was a ceramic artist looking for a studio, and the downtown area of Omaha, Nebraska had imploded to surrounding areas like shopping malls and housing, leaving behind these huge, giant warehouses that encompassed what was a very interesting place in the middle of the country to bring supplies before you dispersed it everywhere else. Like Kansas City, like Minneapolis, so forth, Chicago. So I was able to, when you leave school, you leave art school, you no longer have the janitor, sweeping the floors and putting in the light bulbs. You also don't have your comrades, and nobody's sparring with you about what the hell you're doing. So it was you kind of go out there in the world, and you don't have the right money or ability to make a studio, especially a ceramic studio. It takes a little bit of extra dough to make that kind of happen. So I had a studio, but it was pretty isolated. So I decided to look for something where I could have friends with me and other people. And the first building I had was about 12,000 square feet. I came down here in 1971 and to the old market area, and had the Greenberg Fruit Company building. And I had my ceramic studio, like a lot of people, down in the basement area. And my kiln came up through the sidewalk. There was some room under the sidewalk, so it was a fireproof room. What we wanted to do at that time was to give studios to artists so that we could, not only work together or work with each other, but have an area that was celebrating what we were doing in the sense of craftsmen and artists. So I was in that building for 13 years, and then we were at that situation which we've all seen in the craft world, where you have an audience and they come to see someone like Tony Hepburn or John Gill and Andrea or Betty Woodman or Paul Zollner or June, and you have people on one side and the master artist working here. I wanted to kind of break that up a little bit, and I had fallen in love with early, as a young ceramic artist, with the Omaha Brickworks. And here was a terracotta vignette that was amazing. It was like being in a toyland for a ceramic artist. Everything was terracotta, everything around you. It was either being made or being dug up or being deteriorated. It was being vitrified. It was being over vitrified. So there were no regulators on those 40-foot wide, 20-foot tall kilns at all. And Maury Cullen was a third-generation brickmaker, and he could take you around town here and show you what buildings are made of his bricks. So I started putting artists to work out there at the Brickyard, and Maury was kind of curious too about what could happen. And the first year we had Tony Hepburn in, and a lot of other people that would work along at the same time together in the Brickyard. And again, it was like, oh, you need a ton of clay, it would come over and plop, it was in front of you. The second year, I accidentally ran into June and showed him some slides. You know how we used to hold them up to the sunlight all the time. We don't have them on our phone anymore. And I told him I'd like to invite him to Omaha to work in a Brickyard. He did come that following year. along with Betty Woodman, Wayne Higbee, Arnie Zimmerman, Kurt Mangus, Eva Kwong, Thurman Statham, and about 30 other participants. And we all worked in the brickyard together. And at that time, June had a kiln to himself. And he said to me, well, I don't, I can make, 5,000-6,000 cups, or I can make a couple of big sculptures. So that's when the larger clay work started as an experiment. Of course, he made larger work than he could actually get out of the kiln. So we had to dig down a trough to get it out finally, after it all dried and happened. That kind of work continued. And then June moved to Omaha, and he fell also in love with all these wonderful old buildings down here. And we've had several of them, different times and different places. Started a residency program called the Bemis. It's a 100,000 square foot warehouse. It's had over now 45, almost going on 50 years, 1,000 artists at it that have all received stipends and big spaces to work and support and materials, if we have them, whatever we have in materials. But June went on to build his own studio at the same time and continue his own work. And I left there after 25 years or so, and came over to work with June. So we acquired some other warehouses, and we didn't know exactly. We had this block long of property, which was an old dairy. They made more butter than any place else in the United States, and invented the refrigeration truck. Just like, a lot of things in America that just sort of happened. Nebraska's very young. It's about 158 years old, which is hard to imagine these days. So we had this beautiful dairy and this garage here that was for trucks and stuff, so we made galleries, and we wanted to do something about creativity. June said, that's the only thing I know. The only thing I know is being creative. If I wasn't creative, I don't know what the heck I'd be. So we decided to be more encompassing and say creativity in all fields. So we created the Kaneko. It's named after him because that was kind of his idea. And we are in the throes. This is a John Buck exhibition of moving wooden sculptures that John makes. Very interesting show. We have about 70,000 square feet in the space. This is Sue Knight, who's working on different things with color, water, net, cutting out patterns. We're doing educational classes there also. We talk about things in medicine. We talk about things in science. We're very involved with anything that has to do with creativity, because those of us in the field who are busy working as artists and making things, have all been, someone's always said to me, oh, I wish I could be creative. I'm not creative at all, and that's not true. Quite often we have to relearn what we were not taught. We have to relearn what things are in order to express ourselves. And creativity is the vehicle for that. So we do shows with light, we do shows with medicine, we do shows with, Roseanne Cash was here doing music, teaching music, songwriting. So we're very busy with that, doing that new facility. It's all of this is within 2 blocks that we kind of have here. So that's what we've been doing. This is the latest show called Big Clay. That show, there's some Goro Suzuki chairs here on one side to the left. Pat Seiler toward the back, Ken Little, Viola Fry, Annabeth Rosen, and Stan Welsh. Also, over on the other side there, we have some work by Rudy Audio also. So this is part of our own private collection. We've obviously, there's Tony Hepburn and Jun Kaneko collaboration Gates in this show too. This is the second show. We switched out several pieces from the first exhibit. So we put on exhibitions about clay. We put on exhibitions about a lot of different things over the last 18 years that we've been doing this. So if you're ever in Omaha, come see us. Oh, this is an interesting project. Jun Kaneko always likes to challenge himself. One day in the studio at Cranbrook, a young girl walked in. She was 3 years old, her mother was a little bit behind her, touring the studios. I think that maybe her mother had something to do with Cranbrook. And little Anna came in and saw June painting. And she says, I like to paint. And he said, well, I like to paint too. She said, well, I'd like to paint with you. And he said, well, that would be fun. I'm going to talk to your mother. So he worked with her for 2.5 years every Saturday afternoon. And they made 85 drawings on really beautiful paper. June had arranged a table that was very low and all the colors on it. And he hung the beautiful Arches paper very low for her to work on. And at about age 5, her mother decided to move back to Chile in South America, and we lost contact with her. The key point here, though, I meant to say is that June gave Anna complete control. Anna could say new paper. Sometimes he'd be at a point with her that he thought the drawing was just absolutely great and wanted to stop, but she wouldn't say new paper. So he tried to trick her and it didn't work, did it, June? So we lost contact with Anna. Her mother took 2 drawings. They moved to South America. We tried to find her several times. June shook her hand when she left and said, we're going to split these when you're 21 years old. We're going to flip a coin and we're going to split these drawings. And we did hear she was in San Francisco. Of course, we thought, oh, she's at San Francisco Art Institute. No, actually, she became an environmental attorney, which is just great too. And we, by quite chance, were in Santa Barbara where she lives with the production of June's work that was being made, a symphony. And we met Anna, and she was just here about a month and a half ago, and they're just starting to separate the drawings. And we hope the drawings will, go to children's museums and go to children's hospitals and so forth, and let people experience this sort of very interesting relationship where the child actually has control and the artist is there along with the child creating something. So it's been a very successful show. This is the front of the Kaneko. It runs a block long. And we're going to put an addition on the back that's going to be June's collection building. And basically his mentors and his work we have about 1,600 pieces we've identified. So after I raise about $30 million, we'll do it. So that'll happen, right, June?
Thank you. Oh, please, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Other questions you might have?
Well, I'm just wondering, yes, how do you finance such an incredibly ambitious project? It's stupefying.
Yeah, we have this sort of kind of phrase of throw money at the building. Omaha's Omaha can be a very supportive city, very passionate people here about the arts. It's a young city in many ways. The visual arts were the sort of poor sister here. When you came out to this part of the country before the Louisiana Purchase, you either walked out here or came on a wagon train or something like that. And so all your arts were on foot. You either sang or you danced or you performed or you read for people, you read stories, did theater. You didn't come out with your bronze casting facility or make something with clay. So I think that the visual arts were a little behind here. And now there's just so much going on. There's so much happening here. And the Bemis itself has really introduced so many people to Omaha. A lot of them have stayed, artists have stayed and moved into the community. And so it's just a really active, wonderful place right now.
So now we have a new destination. We have to go to Minneapolis and we have to come to Omaha. Hope there are flights between those 2 cities.
There's lots of flights.
That was wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Ree. And your story of this young little girl is remarkable, and hopefully that will inspire teachers everywhere to take advantage of the brilliant minds and the keen eye of children that we often overlook.
Yes.
So, Ree, that was our last question, but I know before I sum up tonight's wonderful conversation, Richard has something he'd like to say.
Thank you, John. In closing, I wanted, because this is such a wonderful opportunity to see such dear people, In closing, I'd like to give a quote from JUN KANEKO's book, the 1996 Dutch series catalog. Art making is so limited, so frustrating, but at the same time, so mysterious and so exciting. I hope I could flow with this exciting and mysterious feeling to the end of my life. End of quote.
Thank you, Richard. How
And
appro-
then one more thing, Joan, there's an elderly potter in Kyushu, Japan, told me in 1977, the highest honor to bestow on one clay artist to another is, and this I excuse my Kyushu Japanese, Kaneko Jun to Goro Suzuki wa honto ni shiaji ga haite masu no. And that it means that truly Kaneko Jun and Goro Suzuki have the taste of clay in their soul. Humanity is so fortunate to have these great artists of our time sharing their soul in the true taste of clay. Thank you.
What more can I say? Thank you, Richard. It is just beautiful. Before I take a few questions that we have, I wanted to just bring our audience up to date on forthcoming activities that our gallery is doing. Our current show with Futomoto Yoshimi and Fujino Sachiko continues till the end of October, and that will be followed by our superstars of Kutani from the Ishikawa Prefecture, Nakamura Takuo and Takiguchi Jun. And in January, for the winter show, which I think is my 43rd, 44th year in that fair, we have commissioned works either in black and white or both black and white for this exhibition, with some works that I've been able to find by some fabulous past masters of generations before. Interesting to this audience may be a panel that I will be moderating at the fair on January 24th, titled Shaping Taste, Asian Ceramics and the Making of American Art and Design. So that sort of takes this conversation backwards in a sense. Our panelists will include Glenn Adamson, I'm sure known to most of you, David Barquist of the Philadelphia Museum of Art, Monica Binsick of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Ulysses Dietz, Curator Emeritus of the Newark Museum, and Elizabeth Williams of RISD. Just for those who want to attend in person, it will be recorded and available on our site later on. Tickets disappear amazingly quickly. They only have seating for 150, so please keep an eye on the Winter Show website to get your tickets early. So, questions. First, I have to read a statement by all of our friends, Jeff Shapiro, who was with us today. And Jeff wrote for all of you, a comment and inspiration from time spent visiting Goro was, of course, his originality, his free spirit, and the scale and power of his work. But perhaps more so was what he said, quote, as an artist, know no fear. An artist should not be intimidated in any way. Nicole, maybe you might be able to, for Sensei's edification, sort of translate that a bit, put you on the spot.
はい、鈴木先生、ジェフ・シャピロからのコメントなんですけど、ジェフ・シャピロが鈴木先生にお邪魔した時に、お邪魔した時の思い出なんですけど、鈴木先生のオリジナリティ、自由な作品を作ること、そしてすごい大きなものを自由に作るっていうことがすごいインパクトが高かったんです。でもそれだけじゃなくて、もう鈴木先生がおっしゃった言葉、作家さんとして怖さを知らないことが大事ですっていう言葉がすごい心に続いてますっていうことを教えてくださいました。
ありがとうございました。
Thank you. ありがとうございます。
Another
Thank you.
question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Another question from another friend of the gallery, Jennifer Hansen, was the question about the pioneering a movement called Sodesha. And did the Sodesha artists have an influence on your avant-garde freedom to choose new pathways? Let me first ask Kaneko-san if they did, even though he's basically based in America, and then we'll ask Suzuki Sensei, same question.
Sudeshka movement? Yeah, did that movement influence you at all? Giving you freedom? Or did the American presence?
That time, I wasn't even aware of the Sodesha. You have to remember, I had no knowledge of ceramics because I wasn't interested. And then I was getting into just starting painting. So I was sucked into painting at the beginning. And then I found out a little later, Sodesha is probably one of the earliest group of ceramic artists started to be interested in contemporary understanding of material. So later I met Kazuo Yagi and then Junichi Kurakuma and then other people, second generation, third generation. They had a pretty influential philosophy about clay. So I knew they were existing, but by that time, I moved to US. So people think that they have a hard time to name Kaneko Japanese or American. So sometimes I have a show in Japan, and some people write about me, and then they say, should I write you American or Japanese? So I say, it's up to you. I don't think that way. So you got freedom to pick.
Do you have other questions? Yeah, stop it.
Thank you, Sensei. Nicole, maybe you could pose the question to Suzuki Sensei also.
Yes, of course. 鈴木先生への質問なんですけれども、ソーデーシャという、前衛な焼き物を作った運動があったんではないんですか。その、ソーデーシャは鈴木先生に何か影響がありましたかっていう質問がございました。
あんまり僕の場合は関係なく、あんまりそういう人とはあんまり付き合いがなかったような気がします。
So he says in this situation, I don't think they had much of an impact on my making. I didn't know any of them or work with any of them.
八木和夫とかいろんな人は知ってますよ。
Of course, he knows Yagi Kazuo and other members of the movement, but they.
何 ?OK?
Is that all right?
半分頭がボケてますから。
Oh, he's saying my brain's not working so well. He's up very early in the morning right now.
But I have another question for you, Sensei, as a dealer, and I look at your work of the jubako that I forgot 30 levels, not sanjukai. What happened to that work? Did that work ever find a home? And if so, how does one display a work like that in an earthquake zone?
で、申し訳ないんですけど、
うん
鈴木先生にはもう一つの質問がございまして、
はい。
さっき紹介してくださった織部の箱なんですけど、それは結局どこかの博物館とか、コレクターの証拠に入ってましたか？で、もしどっかの美術館とかにあるんでしたら、その美術館とか、個人のコレクションでも結構ですけど、特に地震の多いところ、日本は地震が多いので、その高い、高くて狭いものをどうやって飾るんですか？
難しいですね。
ね
5段軸打ち上げよって。
それはプラスチックの箱にガードして倒れないようにして飾ればいいと思いますけど。
で、それは結局どっかに博物館とかに入ってましたか？それとも自分のものとして持って
いや、まだそれは展覧会の時に
家にある。
家にありますから、
Okay, so he's saying he still has it in his personal collection, but he was thinking it would be difficult, in fact, to display in an earthquake-ridden area like Japan. His suggestion for anyone interested in displaying such a work would be to create a large plastic box surrounding the piece and to display it that way.
って書いてある。
全部箱に入っているという。木箱に、
5個ずつ。
5個ずつ
So he designed.
木箱に入ってしまってあります。
So he has it in storage, broken apart into 5 tiers each, and he has a tomobako for each of the 5 tiers. This is something that I believe he mentioned to me, but he created a separate lid for each 5 tiers of the 30-tier piece so that it could be displayed as a series of 5-tiered boxes as well.
Just wait.
To our audience, it's the perfect family Christmas gift. You have something for every member of your family, or if you're having a Thanksgiving dinner for an entire crew, there you have it. One piece does it all. I'm afraid we've run out of time. I just want to thank all of our amazing participants for their preparation, their insight, their passion, which is palpable. And Richard, I have to go spend more time with you. I haven't spent enough. I was so inspired visiting your establishment and meeting so many of your apprentices, and the people are so committed. And I thank our audience for hanging in with us. We ran an hour and a half, and it was really terrific to have you all with us. Safe travels, everyone. Goro Sensei, please get some more sleep, take a nap tonight. And I wish you well, and hopefully we'll see you all online sometime in the near future. Good night and good morning.